Brilliant. Sneeze went. Alright, good morning everyone. Welcome to the Morning Bible. That's a much better intro. Today we are back in Luke chapter 6. It's going to be good. I'm very excited for it. I don't know, should we do a recap of what's happened? I feel like I haven't done a recap for a few videos. Jesus, he is out now teaching, basically. He is in the big chunk of what's called his ministry, where he goes around teaching people things. He goes around healing people, casting out demons, doing all sorts of things. At the moment there's a group of Pharisees who are sort of following him around, not very happy with a lot of the things Jesus is saying, because in the Pharisees' eyes these things contradict the old Jewish writings, but Jesus has stood there saying, no, actually I'm coming to fulfill these writings, I'm coming as the answer to these things, and I am, I'm the Son of God, so I've got authority over what the rule is, and I'm saying that we've got new rules now. I've come with a new covenant, which means like a new agreement for people, and I'm inviting all of you into it if you want to come. Cool, so let's keep reading today. We've got a couple of really famous things to talk about today, which I'm really excited for. So we're in Luke chapter 6, going from verse 27. This is following on directly from what Jesus was saying yesterday, where he said, blessed are you if X, woe to you if Y. Now Jesus is going on to bring in a new bit of teaching, but he's still sort of stood there. This is all one speech, effectively. He says, but I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. So this is a very, very famous passage, and I think this sort of summarises a lot of Jesus' teachings on how we should actually behave and interact with one another, is to love your enemies, is to have this kind of radical, extreme love, where it extends out to everyone, even the people who hate you. It extends out to people who curse you, it extends out to people who abuse you. You've got to show love to these people, which is a huge, huge ask, because there are some real awful things that people can do to one another, and it isn't easy at all to love people sometimes when they've done horrible things, but Jesus calls us to do that, which is very, it's like quite a world-changing kind of challenge for us, of how much do we actually love our enemies. Because a lot of the time someone will do something to us and we'll very quickly just say, okay, cool, you're out of my life, I hate you now, I've dismissed you as being my enemy, I just don't like you anymore, and that's the end of that. I'm not going to interact with you again, and if I do interact with you, it's going to be very frosty. Jesus is saying, no matter what that person has done, you need to show them love. You need to rise above it, and you need to demonstrate love to that person. Why does he say this? We'll get onto that in a second, but let's look at a few more examples of what Jesus tells us to do with these people. To the one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other one also. So if someone hits you, you offer your other cheek for them to hit that cheek too. And from the one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. So if someone steals from you, if they're mugging you to your face, don't hold on to things, keep giving them things, don't put up a fight, basically. This next one's a real challenge for everyone. Give to everyone who begs from you. How often do we just walk past someone on the street who's begging? And from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. So if someone takes your stuff, don't be sort of losing it, trying to get that stuff back from them, constantly harassing them, trying to get them to pay you back. Just wipe the debt clean, let it go. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. And so that kind of summarises it, is this passage is essentially saying, look, if you want people to be ridiculously forgiving and loving and kind to you, then you've got to be that to other people. And it isn't even saying that, because that implies that by you behaving this way to other people will do that back to you. Jesus isn't even saying that. He's saying be this way to people regardless of how they treat you. Be radically loving to people regardless of how they treat you. You could get no reward from any of them. They might not appreciate it, they might not see any of the value of it, they might not be any nicer to you. If anything, they could be more mean to you. But you are still called to be like this towards them. Jesus says, if you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. So he's basically saying, look, everyone loves the people who love them, right? Because there's love there. It's easy to love someone who loves you. That's just, everyone does it. Even if you're an awful, horrible person, you still do that. You still love the people who love you. You still do good to the people who do good to you. Because that's just how we are as people. But Jesus is challenging us to say, okay, you need to take that a step further, a big step further. And you need to offer that love to the people who hate you, and offer to do good to the people who do bad to you. He says, if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. So Jesus is saying, look, it could be giving money, for example. If you're giving money to someone and you're there going, oh, they better pay me back, they better pay me back, they better pay me back, like if you buy them a coffee or buy them a drink or whatever, then you're constantly there like, they owe me money, they need to pay me back, they need to pay me back, then, that's what sinners do. The radical thing is to buy something for someone and just let it go. To buy someone a birthday present and not expect them to get you a birthday present as well. To put it in like a small example. But it extends out from the smallest examples right to the biggest things. Jesus says, but love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great. And you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. So it's saying the reason we do this is because we have a God who has set us that example. We have a God who came first, who has shown huge amounts of love to all the people who have been ungrateful and evil throughout history. God still loves everyone who he's made. Even the worst, most horrible people, God still loves them and has still shown kindness and goodness to them. And so this passage is saying, look, we are sons of God, so we should be reflecting that. That's the kind of standard that we should be aiming for. That's the moral that we should be aiming for, is to love everyone, even when they're ungrateful, even when they're evil. It says, be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. So God offers all of us mercy for the things we've done. God says, I am willing to forgive you if you come to me and apologise. If you truly repent for your actions, truly say sorry, I will forgive you for these things. And so that is the example that we have to follow in our own lives as well. We have to be ready to forgive people like that. There's a classic example that always gets brought up in church. I think I've heard it several times this year alone. But there's a lady called Corrie ten Boom, who during the Second World War, she hid Jews in her house to keep them away from the Nazis. She was a Christian lady, and so eventually she got locked up as well. She got taken into a concentration camp, and her sister died in there, and it was really tragic, and she had a really difficult, awful time in there. And when she came out, she was talking at a church, and a Nazi officer, one of the officers from the camp, was sat there in the church, and she was giving a talk about forgiveness, about the importance of forgiving people. And at the end of the service, this Nazi officer comes up to her and holds out his hand and essentially says, I don't know if you remember me, but I was one of the officers in the camp. I was wondering if you could forgive me. And it's just like, could you imagine being in that situation? And she says that she didn't forgive him out of her own goodness, out of her own abilities as a person, because she's such a great person. She had to pray, and God had to do that through her. God had to give her that forgiveness. God had to be the one to go into her and make her reach out her hand and shake hands with this guy. But it's just such a powerful story of what forgiveness in the extreme looks like. Hopefully none of us will ever be in that kind of position where we're forgiving something like that. But it shows us that this isn't saved, to this package of events that could happen to us. There isn't like an upper limit on what we should be forgiving. It's total radical forgiveness, total mercy. And that's absolutely crazy in our current day and age. I was going to do the next passage as well, but I think we'll just leave it there because that's such a concise, beautiful message. And I'll just leave you on one of the things that it says in the notes at the bottom of my Bible. It says, when Jesus is talking, he says, love your enemies, do good, lend, expecting nothing in return, your reward will be great, you will be sons of the Most High. So he says, you will be sons of the Most High. And on the surface, it can seem like that says, you will become sons of Most High. If you obey these rules, if you are really forgiving, really loving to all these people, then God will say, okay, cool, you have become like my son. You are welcomed in because of your good deeds. But it's actually the opposite. This is actually being said because you are already a son of the Most High. It's saying, you have a God who is like this. This God has created you in his image. By you behaving like this, you are reflecting the God that made you. You aren't doing this in order to get close to God, to get brownie points, to tick off things on a list. You're doing this because it reflects who you are supposed to be. This is the expression of like the inner godliness that God has put in you. You are becoming more like his image by doing this. You are becoming more of what you're supposed to be. And so I'll end it there. This isn't a passage about striving to be a great person, striving to get into heaven, striving to do all these things. This is a passage of where your heart should be. This is a passage saying that you need to love yourself first and foremost. You need to love your God first and foremost. You need to love those around you first and foremost. Those three things all need to exist together. You need to recognize that God has created you in his image. And so you need to love God, love God himself, and then love the image of God, because that is created in God's image. And then from that loving of your godliness should come all of these things. It's an expression of, who you're meant to be, is offering this radical kind of love, this radical kind of forgiveness. And so we'll leave it there this morning. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm very excited for tomorrow's passage, so make sure you don't miss it. Much love.